Welcome to the Legal Learning Podcast. I'm your host, Jolene, and with the Legal Learning Center, I help prospective law students save $300,000 on law school. If you'd like to ensure that you are remembering everything that goes into applying to law school, visit legallearningcenter.com for a free law school application checklist. Today, I'm joined by Colin Levy, a corporate attorney with a passion for legal tech. I fully admit I was a little nervous about this one since I just don't even feel like I know what legal tech is, but Colin lays it all out for us.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. So my name is Colin Levy. I am a lawyer as well as a legal tech writer, speaker, and enthusiast. And I have spent, I'd say, the last 7 or 8 years writing and speaking about technology in the legal context to try to help people overcome their fear of technology and make technology and concepts around technology accessible in an effort to help bring the legal profession out of the 19th century into the 20th century. And I say that on purpose because I'm not so naive as to think that it could go from the 19th all the way to the 21st, skipping over the 20th.
You're absolutely right. I think a lot of lawyers do have a fear of technology, and you do a good job with like your LinkedIn posts, making us all feel like we can talk about it and we can understand it. But firms for sure definitely are in the 19th century. Every time I talk to somebody, I'm shocked at, even if I feel like the place I was working at is a bit behind, other places are super behind. I mean, I was just talking to a friend the other day. They're a nationwide law firm. They're in more than half the states, and they're still paper-based. And he was talking about how during COVID, he goes into the office twice a week to do file exchanges so he can gather new stuff to work on. And I'm like, don't you think this would be a good time to maybe go paperless? I don't know. So what exactly does legal tech actually encompass?
So that's a great question. And I think that actually is partly why legal tech faces resistance, is because people have different definitions of what it is. So the way I would define it is two ways. Number one, it refers to tools used by legal professionals to do and deliver legal services. And that means not just kind of more advanced tools, but also tools you use every day, like Word, Google Docs, Excel, Zoom, what have you. I also think to a certain extent, legal tech is a movement in sort of a cultural phenomenon that is seeking to try to digitize, I would say, the legal industry and bring the legal industry into a world that is data driven and tech enabled.
Yeah, I think when we say legal tech, it sounds so big and scary, but you're right. It does start at a base level of even something simple like what you and I were talking about, off the air dictation software, or yeah, some of these apps. I know, I'm using Trello as a kind of a to-do list, and it doesn't have to be an outside source. It could be something your company makes or whatever. It could be whatever, but we're all using legal tech to some degree to stay organized, to bill, all that stuff. So incorporating more and more of it, I don't think has to be so difficult, and we don't have to be so resistant to it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no need to kind of shoot for the moon. In fact, I often say that it works best to just start small. Start with small, achievable goals and then build off of those goals. Because that way you feel like you're making progress without feeling intimidating and feeling like you're just setting yourself up to fail.
Now, are you aware of law schools doing anything to help current law students be more familiar with legal tech and maybe start integrating it immediately into law firms?
Yeah, so there are a number of law schools that are at the forefront of incorporating technology and tech skills into their curriculums. There is Ryerson in Toronto. There is Suffolk University Law School, which has a whole tech program. There's Northwestern. There's also Northeastern. There's Stanford, which has a program as well. So there are a number of different law schools that are all approaching this from different perspectives, but all share a similar goal of trying to embed technology into their curriculum and graduate students that are tech savvy and view tech as another set of tools in their legal toolbox.
That's great. So how are they actually doing that? Is there specific classes or is it more integrated across the board?
So most are doing it through classes. A lot of them are practical skills based classes with a focus on, some have a focus on actual programming, developing apps. Others focus on project management and process improvement. So it's primarily class based, but I do think more and more schools are looking at making it an actual integral part of their curriculum. Suffolk certainly, I think, is definitely leading the way there, and is probably one of the top legal tech schools in the U.S., if not the top legal tech school in the U.S. But that being said, just because there are some of these schools trying to do some of this and introduce some of these concepts into their curriculums, they're still in the minority. There's still a lot of schools that are not touching this stuff, and it's leaving, I would argue, their students at a disadvantage.
For sure. I know when I went to law school, which I graduated almost 20 years ago, but we all had laptops and yet we weren't allowed to use them on our finals. And it just was so silly because we're all sitting there taking all our notes on our laptops, but we can't use them for the final. And so when it came to the bar exam, you had a choice. Do you want to write it or do you want to take your first ever laptop test as the bar exam? And it was just a little too scary. You knew you could type faster, but you don't want to risk it. So it just really, I feel like, detrimented us that we didn't have that practice, all because our law school didn't want to, get up to date. So
Yeah, no, I think that's an interesting point actually, because certainly most law students, if not all, use laptops to take notes in class. However, I also think that there is a tendency when you're using a laptop in class to make use of the fact that it's connected to your Wi-Fi, and therefore you can do other things while you're, in class. So, some professors I had would ban laptops in class, or would just allow one person to take notes in class. I understand sort of the goal there. I certainly think there can be a tendency to get distracted, but I do think overall, using laptops to learn is an inherent part, I think, of being a tech-enabled, tech-savvy person.
yeah, I think that they need to start encouraging that. And I know for me, everyone learns differently, but for me, what I discovered once I started taking notes with a laptop is that I've always been a horrible note taker. I tend to, my mind drifts. But if I could play a very simple, like solitaire game while the professor was speaking, for some reason that enabled my brain to hone in and actually take down the important notes and kind of sift out the other stuff. So I actually took better notes. So I don't know. I could understand their hesitancy, but it helped me.
Yeah, I do think there also is a need to accommodate different learning styles for sure. I tend to be someone who writes in sort of very systematic ways. I think because I just tend to think that way. So if I'm taking notes on a laptop, I'll sort of create bolded lists and things, or if I'm taking notes by hand, I tend to create charts and arrows to connect things together. But yeah, no, I think there definitely is a need to accommodate different ways of learning, and technology certainly can help with that.
Well, it's nice to hear that the law schools are even offering practical classes, because that's one of the main complaints that lawyers tend to have is my law school had no practical classes. So having a tech-based practical class sounds just, it hits both major things that we need. So that's great. Now, I meet a lot of pre-law students who really want to just start their own firms right out of the gate. That seems to be a really big trend right now. They don't want to go work for the big firms. So, what type of tech tips do you have for them?
So I think that starting your own firm is definitely ambitious and can be appealing and can definitely work out well. But you kind of have to have sort of your basics set down right. I mean, I'm not a cook, but I watch cooking classes and cooking shows. And one of the things that a lot of chefs tend to teach right off the bat is what's called mise en place, which means having all your things set up ready to go before you start even doing your cooking. So basically all the prep work. And I would argue the same thing needs to happen with respect to setting up your own firm, meaning you want to have in place software to handle managing your matters, billing, sort of those administrative tasks are really important. You also want to have a collaboration platform so that you can enable real-time communication with yourself and potentially with your clients as well. And that can be just simply, setting up a Zoom account or something like that. I also think it's very important for lawyers setting up their own firms to just be aware of maintaining documents and files, which is why I mentioned earlier having a matter management system in place is, I think, vital. And you certainly, given that financially it can be costly to get going, you want to spend more of your time on things that are bringing in revenue, which is why I mentioned the importance of having software that can handle sort of the administration of billing and things along those lines as well.
Yeah, there's a lot more, I think, especially these days, that goes into a law firm because you definitely need just so I feel like there's so many different legal tech things you need. And you mentioned communication systems with clients and so forth. Are there apps you feel like are maybe just a little too casual that attorneys shouldn't use, something like Slack or Discord to communicate with clients or teams?
Yeah, I mean, I think if using Teams or using Slack or something like that, I think can work. You just have to be aware of maintaining files and documenting and making sure that everyone's aware of what is happening and ensure that whatever account you're using meets the security requirements that you're ethically and otherwise obligated to adhere to. Um, Certainly, I think there is room to improve in that space for sure when it comes to uh, lawyer or law firm specific communication platforms. But I do think that they can be very useful and important, particularly when you want to have clients that are tech savvy themselves and want to be communicating with you and sharing documents over a secure platform. And there definitely are tools out there that exist, but there's always room for improvement as well.
Now, again, a lot of law firms are way behind. But if an intern or let's say a new hire goes into a firm and notices some easy fixes, some little things, are there ways that you recommend they approach that so that maybe they can actually catch the ear of the partner and convince them, hey, we could try this thing?
So I think the best way to go about doing that is rather than pointing out that this is a problem, because perception is reality and some people and not everyone perceives things the same way, is document what the problem is or what you perceive to be a problem and understand why you think it's a problem in terms of its impact and track that using data. If it's, if because there's a certain system in place and it's taking you, 20 minutes to do something, whereas you think it can be done in 10 and you've done it in 10, and here's what makes the difference. That type of argument and business case I think can be more effective than simply saying, hey, so I'm doing this, but I think, this could be done better this other way, because lawyers tend to not want to be told they're doing something wrong, even though they perhaps are. I think a better way, rather than telling someone they're doing something wrong, is showing them, exactly what is happening, why it is a pain point, and how it can be improved. Be patient and take your time and not kind of just rush from, yeah, this is a problem to saying, hey, this is a problem.
I'm just going to tell everyone listen to Colin because I've actually done what he said not to do. So, yeah, I was a legal secretary before I went into law school. I took a few gap years and we were all using PCs and they wanted to try out the Mac. And so they bought a Mac and they said, who's going to try it? And I said, I'll try it because I had a Mac at home. And it was horrible. Now, again, I didn't know anything about the background of why it's horrible. It just wasn't working right. It was super slow and all this stuff. Of course, it's a brand new computer. I know the computer is not slow, but I just made a list of complaints. Here's what I noticed, right? It's slow, it's this, it's that. And I guess I should have been a little more like you said, maybe a little more data related instead of just this list of complaints, which again, I thought is what they were asking for. But I could definitely see where if I had taken a different approach, it would have been received better because rather than actually use my info, they actually commented on my complaints and told me like I was wrong. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not wrong. I just it's what I noticed, but okay, next time I'll say please and thank you with that little letter. So yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I know a lot of attorneys and a lot of firms, especially I think these bigger ones, are hesitant to jump into the 21st century or the 20th century because they are so big. So it's going to cost a lot to nationwide go paperless, have that system in place. Any ideas on how that can happen or not without too much expense?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it goes back to something I said earlier, which is start small. Um, if for example, the paperless thing, which doesn't surprise me, but scares me that there are firms that are not fully paperless at this point. But that's another discussion to be had. I think that, how about you just start with a certain practice area? And just start digitizing that area first. Because I often think that, you want to build on your successes and be incremental, I think, in how you innovate and become tech enabled. Because oftentimes, you want to kind of know exactly how things operate currently, what the processes are, where the pain points are, and therefore address solutions at those problems, which may or may not be tech related. Some of them may simply be process improvement related. But that's the way to go about it rather than just kind of, as I said before, shooting for the moon, because I often think that, doing that is appealing because you can kind of skip this less sexy stuff. But by skipping over that stuff, you're probably setting yourself up to just make existing problems worse or create new problems you didn't have before.
Yeah, I think actually a good example of that that came to mind when you were talking is, everyone used to have a law library, but we all realized that just wasn't practical. And most firms have moved on, as far as I know, pretty much all firms have moved on to Westlaw or Lexis. They don't update their law libraries anymore, the physical ones. And so that's an easy way we incorporated some tech into our world. And I don't know that we feel like we've incorporated tech anymore because it's such an everyday part of every firm. If a law student is very comfortable with tech and maybe has some tools under their belt, I know personally, if I was to look at their resume and they had these crazy systems and so forth on their resume, I just don't know what that means. Is there a way for a tech savvy law student to put on their resume what their skills are without, writing the systems so that it's actually translatable to me?
Yeah, so certainly, this is a different type of resume than one, if you're looking to move into IT, where kind of listing what systems you know is important. So what I would say is instead of necessarily just listing the specific systems you've used, list what you have accomplished with those systems. Whether it's digitizing documents, organizing contracts, or what have you. Just give examples of projects that you've completed, and in the context of describing that project, mention what system you used. Because I think that if you can emphasize kind of the results and outcomes, that's going to make you stand out more effectively than simply just listing, yeah, so I have knowledge of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, that makes sense because I definitely have seen that on some resumes, and it's like I don't know what this means. So, can you explain it?
Right.
Is this important or not? So, as far as if students are looking to, yeah, incorporate more tech into their lives, where should they be going?
So I get this question a lot. And the good news, although I would argue it's also kind of a double-edged sword a little bit, is there is a ton of information available out there on the subject. However, that also makes it difficult because it can be overwhelming to see all that information. So I think before you start looking around for information to read, have a sense of kind of what it is you're trying to learn more about. Are you trying to learn more about litigation management? Are you trying to learn more about contracts? Are you trying to learn more about documents? Are you trying to simply learn more about automation? And use that sort of as a guide to looking for information that exists out there, because there's tons of it. It just helps to know exactly what you're looking to find. Because the legal tech space, while not necessarily big in people, is big in terms of areas that it covers. Um, more generally speaking, in terms of resources to go to look at, I think though they include things like Law Sight's blog, which kind of gives a general overview of what exists in the market and new developments. Artificial Lawyers, also a similar type of blog. I think that Law 21 by my friend Jordan Furlong is great as well, who's focused a lot on kind of the future of law, but now is focusing on how to actually prepare lawyers for that future. There also are sites like Legal Evolution, which provides long form, detailed, data driven blog posts on kind of the state of the market. There are also blogs like my own, colinslevy.com, where I interview leaders in the field who are doing interesting things, either teaching or creating in the legal tech space. So those are some examples I would give.
Okay. And if somebody feels like they are tech resistant, is there a way that you recommend they kind of break through that?
Yeah, I think you start by asking them what tools do you currently use, and they may say, "Oh, well, I just I type things up on my computer." Well, you're using technology to do that, so yes, I understand your fear of kind of some of this more complicated tech, but it doesn't have to be that complicated. Just think about what you do currently, and think about in an ideal world how you could be doing it better or would like to be doing it better, and then use that as a bridge to show how tools can help that person achieve what they want to achieve.
Yeah, I think there's so many different ways that we can slowly tiptoe into that pond, just in anticipation of today. I was thinking about a task that takes, when I was doing workers' comp, my secretary, it used to take her a lot of time, which was setting up doctor's appointments for injured workers. And she would call the doctor's office, have to wait for a call back, then we have to exchange documents, give them all our stuff, whatever. And, if, a lot of us in the online space, we use like Calendly and stuff like that. And if the doctor's office just had a Calendly and said, okay, if this is a first eval, schedule 2 hours or whatever. And if it's a reeval, schedule 1 hour. And so that you had your guidelines and you could just set it up. And if there was some kind of weird problem, the office can always call you back. But in the meantime, it also has the instructions. Here's what we need from you within 10 days or 10 days of the appointment or whatever. And it would just cut out that middleman for like 90% of those appointments. So,
Yeah, yeah, no, that's exactly right. I mean, I think actually there's an interesting kind of link between the medical industry and the legal industry, because the medical industry used to be like the legal industry, resistant to tech, doing things the way they've always been done. But now medicine makes extensive use of technology for documentation purposes, for automation purposes. They have client portals where patients can enter their information in. And legal, I think, really can take a note and a page from the medical industry and learn how they've made use of tech and do similar things with technology.
yeah, we really can do so much more. And I know some attorneys in some fields complain, that they just don't make, attorney money, right? They don't make good money. And I'm thinking about, okay, so if my secretary used Calendly to set these doctor's appointments, which streamlined all these appointments she makes, that frees up so much more of her time, which means I can dump more stuff on her, which frees up my time, which means I can bill more, which means the firm makes more, and then I make more. So this is all good stuff. And it's something so simple. It's not even a complex, let's, have a whole new system. So yeah, I was just dreaming of all these possibilities before we got on the call today. So I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, no, it's awesome to hear your enthusiasm and excitement. I really think it's that type of thinking that can be very useful with respect to technology, because it's at the end of the day, technology is just a facilitator of allowing you to do things better and more productively. It's not kind of some panacea that's going to solve all of your problems. It's just going to hopefully resolve some of them and make others less of a problem. And that's really how any tool should be viewed. It's really ultimately a tool. It's up to you to use it effectively. So it's kind of a relationship between you and the tool. So, yes, the tool can accomplish certain things, but it needs your assistance to get there.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so this is my last question for you today, Colin. Are there any apps or tools that specifically you think law students can use to help their education, make life easier as a, 1L, 2L, what or whatnot?
I mean, there's a lot of different tools out there that exist that I think can help. I mean, something like Trello or some other project management app can help you kind of manage kind of what you're trying to accomplish in terms of tasks that you have. Or, such as, studying for a writing a paper, studying for an exam, completing a problem set, what have you. There are also tons of note-taking apps that can help as well. I think those are some of the technologies that I think can help, as well as collaboration platforms like Teams or Slack or what have you, particularly when you're working on projects together, or you have a study group and you want to work on things and ask each other questions together, even if you're not in the same physical space together.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Ever since I discovered Trello, it's just been an eye opener. It's been a game changer. It's hard to fit all your to-dos on your daily planner. I do like my physical daily planner, but it just makes it messy. So now I have two things. I have my schedule and my to-do on Trello. So yeah, I definitely second that one for sure. But cool. Well, thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate your time, Colin.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, and I've really enjoyed speaking with you.
Before we get into my top takeaways, a quick word from our sponsor, Juno. If you need to take out student loans, check in with Juno first. Juno can often offer law students 1 to 2% lower interest rates than the federal government, and with no origination fees and oftentimes cash back as well. Visit advisor.legallearningcenter.com/Juno for more information. My top takeaways from this chat with Colin. Number one, legal tech can be as simple as Excel. So it doesn't have to be this big, scary, unknown thing. Number two, if you want to create change at your firm, start with data. Number three, some law schools actually have legal tech programs. So if that's something you want to learn more about or are interested in, check it out. And number four, if you want to learn more about legal tech, pick a specific topic. There's too many topics out there, you'll just get overwhelmed. So pick something and learn it. That's it for this episode. A full transcript will be available at legallearningcenter.com/Colin. There will also be show notes with all the links mentioned today there as well. As always, if you enjoyed the show, if you learned something today, please like, share, comment, subscribe. That just helps this show help more people. Thanks.